You are sitting in a perfectly safe room. Your phone vibrates on the desk. You read a single, frustrating message from your boss. Your chest instantly tightens. Why does a tiny glowing screen make you feel like you are going to die? You feel a sudden surge of heat in your face. You want to scream. You want to throw the phone across the room. You try to tell yourself to calm down, but your body refuses to listen. You have been told that losing your temper is a character flaw. You assume you just lack willpower, but the real answer is far stranger. You are not losing your mind. Your brain is simply functioning exactly as it was designed to. Staying calm when emotions run wild is not a matter of willpower. It is a matter of evolutionary hacking. To understand this, you must look at the architecture inside your skull. Your brain is not one single machine. It is a stack of different evolutionary eras built on top of each other. Deep in the center lies the amygdala. This is your ancient threat detection system. It is primitive. It is blindingly fast. It does not care about logic. For millions of years, your ancestors survived because of this exact piece of neural hardware. When a predator snapped a twig in the prehistoric brush, the amygdala did not pause to analyze the sound. It instantly hijacked the nervous system. It flooded the bloodstream with adrenaline and cortisol. It accelerated the heart rate to pump oxygen to the limbs. How did early humans survive such a brutal world? They survived because their brains prioritized instant action over careful thought. But today, you do not live in the wild. You face psychological threats instead of physical ones. But your amygdala does not know the difference. When you read a passive-aggressive email, your amygdala reacts exactly as if a tiger is leaping from the shadows. It initiates a biological protocol known as an amygdala hijack. This term was coined by neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux. Ledoux discovered that visual and auditory information travels to the amygdala milliseconds before it reaches the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the logical, rational part of your brain located right behind your forehead. It is the part that knows screaming at your boss will get you fired. But because the neural pathway to the amygdala is shorter and faster, the alarm sounds before logic can even enter the room. This is why your heart pounds before you consciously realize why you are angry. You are experiencing a biological override. You cannot stop this initial reaction. It is hardwired into your DNA. The spike in adrenaline is involuntary, but you can stop yourself from ruining your day in the heat of the moment. The secret is not to suppress the emotion. The secret is to manipulate the biological response. When you feel the wave of rage or panic washing over you, your instinct is to fight it. You clench your jaw. You hold your breath. You tell yourself to just stop being angry. This is the worst thing you can possibly do. When you hold your breath and tense your muscles, you are sending a physical confirmation to your amygdala that the threat is real. You are telling your brain that it is time to fight. You cannot think your way out of a biological alarm. You must use a biological key to turn it off. That key is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a massive communication superhighway between your brain and your internal organs. It is the primary driver of your parasympathetic nervous system. This is the system responsible for rest and digestion. It is the exact opposite of the fight or flight response. A groundbreaking researcher named Stephen Porges developed the polyvagal theory to explain how this nerve dictates our emotional states. Porges discovered that you can consciously and manually override an amygdala hijack by speaking directly to the vagus nerve. How do you communicate with a nerve buried deep inside your chest? You do it through your breath, but it cannot be just any type of breathing. When you are panicked, you take short, shallow breaths into your upper chest. This signals danger. To activate the vagus nerve, you must manipulate the diaphragm. You must take a slow, deep breath into your belly, and crucially, you must make the exhale longer than the inhale. When you exhale slowly, your heart rate naturally decelerates. This sends a massive neurological signal up the vagus nerve directly into the brainstem. The signal translates to one simple message. The environment is safe. You are safe. The predator is gone. As soon as this signal reaches the brain, The amygdala powers down. The flood of cortisol stops. The blood vessels relax. The physical sensation of panic begins to drain from your body like water from a sink. You have successfully hacked your own nervous system. You have turned off the false alarm. But the biological hack is only the first step. Once your heart rate slows down, your prefrontal cortex comes back online. Now you have access to logic. Now you have the capacity to choose your response instead of reacting blindly. This is where the true mental game begins. Even with a calm body, the triggering thought is still sitting in your mind. The insulting email is still on the screen. If you are not careful, you will simply re-trigger the amygdala all over again. How do you prevent your mind from reigniting the biological fire? You must use a technique called cognitive reappraisal. This psychological framework was heavily studied by neuroscientist Kevin Ochsner. Ochsner used brain imaging to see what happens when people actively change the meaning of a stressful situation. He found that when subjects consciously reframed a negative event, the activity in their amygdala drastically decreased. Cognitive reappraisal is the act of changing the story you are telling yourself. When someone cuts you off in traffic, your initial story is that they are a terrible person who disrespected you on purpose. This story creates anger. It creates a feeling of injustice. But what if you change the narrative? What if you tell yourself they are rushing to the hospital for an emergency? Suddenly, the anger dissolves. It is replaced by neutrality or empathy. The reality of the situation did not change. The other car still cut you off, but the meaning you assigned to it changed entirely. This is the ultimate tool for emotional mastery. You cannot control what other people do. You will face rudeness, incompetence, and hostility, but you have absolute control over the narrative you construct around those events. When you feel attacked, your ego wants to take it personally. It demands retaliation. You must learn to separate your identity from the external event. Imagine you are standing behind a thick pane of soundproof glass. On the other side of the glass, someone is yelling at you. You can see their face turning red, but you cannot hear the words. The impact cannot touch you. You are just observing a biological organism reacting to its own internal stress. Their anger belongs entirely to them. When you adopt this perspective, the insult loses all of its power. Emotional reactivity is a habit. It is a deeply worn neural pathway. Every time you lose your temper, you are teaching your brain that exploding is the correct response to friction. But neuroplasticity means you can rewire this system. The crucial moment happens in the gap between the stimulus and your response. Famed psychiatrist Viktor Frankl once wrote about this exact gap. He survived the unimaginable horrors of a concentration camp by recognizing that human freedom exists in the pause before a reaction. In that pause, you have the power to choose. When the trigger happens, your brain wants to rush across the old, familiar bridge of anger. Your job is to stop at the edge of the bridge. You take the long exhale. You activate the vagus nerve. You step back and look at the situation objectively. You ask yourself a simple question. Is this worth my peace? 99% of the time, the answer is no. The passive-aggressive email is not worth a massive spike in blood pressure. You begin to see emotional reactivity as a massive waste of precious biological energy. You realize that staying calm is not about suppressing your true feelings. It is about conserving your power. When you react with rage, you are letting a complete stranger dictate your heart rate. But when you remain calm, you retain absolute authority over yourself. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness observing those emotions. Anger is just a temporary chemical storm passing through your nervous system. Panic is just a sudden rush of cortisol. These chemicals have a remarkably short half-life. If you do not feed them with negative thoughts, they will dissipate on their own in about 90 seconds. Your only job is to ride out those 90 seconds. You do not fight the storm. You let it wash over you while you breathe. You let the ancient machinery do its thing, knowing that it will soon pass. So, return to that room. You are sitting at the desk. The phone vibrates. You read the frustrating message. The sudden surge of heat hits your face. But this time, you do not throw the phone. You do not scream. You close your eyes. You take a slow, deep breath into your belly. You exhale for 6 long seconds. You feel the vagus nerve send the signal of safety. The biological alarm powers down. The prefrontal cortex boots up. You look at the screen, completely unbothered.